Welcome to the Darkstream. Vox Day, voxday.blogspot.com, and we are seeing if we have audio functionality yet or if we're still dealing with the robo voice. So if you're among the first to tune in, please let me know if you're able to hear this properly or not. We tried several times last night, but the audio was hopelessly messed up. So, sounds good. All right. So apparently it was just a minor issue. Glad to hear that it is working properly. So today is going to be a little bit of inside baseball. And so stick with me for a bit. If you're not an Alt Hero Q backer, you may not be fully aware of what I'm talking about. But as you may know, we had a problem with a crowdfunding site called Indiegogo. And Indiegogo retroactively canceled the Alt Hero Q campaign. And what they did was wait until the campaign was over. They told us they were going to pay us the funds, and then 2 weeks later they not only didn't pay them, but they canceled the whole thing, refunded all the money to the backers, and claimed that we had somehow violated their terms of use. And so we have done our homework now. We've talked with the various lawyers. We have gone through all the various permutations and interpretations of what's required by the process. And we are now ready to move. Now, this doesn't mean that we're going to be able to talk about this. In fact, one of the reasons why I am speaking to you today about this is that once the process gets started, we probably won't be able to talk about it. So I wanted to let you know now. There's a lot of backers. Some of you probably here are backers who opted out of the class action waiver. If you have done so, please be ready, because we have figured out how all of the backers who opted out are going to be able to join forces and make a class action claim against Indiegogo in much the same way that we are. So obviously the claims are different. They have to be different because they are one party being one side to the transaction, the other parties being the other side. You have different structures. The class action waiver refers to the Indiegogo terms of service. If you use the site in any way, the only way you're able to do a class action, to all act together, is to send them an email opting out of this automatic waiver. And so a lot of people did that. I don't know exactly how many. I think it was well over 50. Might have been well over 100, to be honest. But everyone who did that can take part. Now, we don't know how enforceable that is. And so if you are a backer of the Indiegogo campaign, it's possible that you will be also able to join that class action arbitration claim. We will certainly arrange the people. I mean, we're not directly involved in this, but the people who are handling it, and there are several backers who are taking the lead on this. They'll be in touch with you and or we'll make it possible for you to get in touch with them, and they will be taking care of this in the next week or so. Now, if you were not a backer at the time, obviously you can't take part in this aspect of it. But if you want to support the efforts, what you can do is you can support the existing Alt Hero Q campaign. If you go to arkhavencomics.com, you'll see on the upper right there's a image that talks about the campaign 2.1. If you click on that, that'll bring you to the replacement crowdfunding site that we've actually created on our own site that we have, over which we have full control. And so that would be a way that you can support this, because obviously the more backing we have, the more we can demonstrate to the arbitrator the level of interest and support for this, and the extremely egregious and outrageous and improper behavior of Indiegogo in this regard. Evan says you don't receive a waiver. This was all on the blog, and we also sent out emails. You had to email Indiegogo and tell them that you were opting out. So if you sent them that email saying I'm opting out of the waiver, let me back up a second. The waiver is implicit in your use of the Indiegogo site, but according to their rules, you had to within 30 days email them and tell them I am opting out of the waiver. And if you did that, then you have the ability to participate in a class action arbitration claim. And some of the backers are leading that charge. Now, like I said, if you were a backer but you didn't opt out, it's still possible that the arbitrator will permit you to participate in this. So, the fact that they have these terms of use do not make them the Bible. The arbitrator will certainly pay some respect to it, will certainly take it into account, but is not necessarily bound to follow whatever it dictates. And so now there's some interesting things to be apprised of in this regard. First of all, no, it's too late. You had to do so within 30 days. So it's not possible. I mean, I've already said, if you opted out back in October, then you can participate in the class action for sure. If you did not opt out, you still may be able to participate. So we will keep you, well, you will be informed one way or the other. And again, if you want to participate, but you were not able to, or you were not a backer of the original campaign, I would encourage you to become a backer of the current campaign, which you can do at the arkhavencomics.com site. Now, what's interesting is we've been doing some digging, and probably the most interesting development that we have discovered so far is that the woman who is responsible for this action, the head of Indiegogo's Trust and Safety, her name is Carrie Barker, and she is no longer employed by Indiegogo. And in fact, it looks like she left Indiegogo in November, and this all took place on October 11th. So it's very, very interesting to see how that employment status has changed, and we're certainly looking forward to discovering whether her change of employment was entirely voluntary or not. We've just begun looking into some of those aspects of it, and we'll have more information on it soon. So, got a phone call here. Take it in the kitchen. Anyhow, let's see. Sorry I can't super chat. Yeah, we don't have this. This is non-monetized. It's all free. I've enjoyed your comic books. Hey, we have a guest. Come here. Come here. Oh. Come here, cutie. Apparently she doesn't want to be on camera. She's really too much of a star. So anyhow, no. Come on. So anyhow, let's see. I've enjoyed your comic books. My sister is a young leftist who likes fantasy novels. Which titles might introduce her to some of your ideas and ideology? Well, I don't know that they do, because I'm usually pretty good at keeping my ideology out of my fiction for the most part. But if she likes fantasy novels, then I would definitely recommend A Throne of Bones. She likes big epic fantasy. I'm told that's some of the best stuff out there. So, A Throne of Bones, Summa Helvetica, A Sea of Skulls, all that. So, okay. Happy Housewife is shouting out to the Bears. Google Evil said his mind was blown by Jordanetics. That's good. So and Dan says he's just bought Jordanetics and The Irrational Atheist. Very excited to read them. If nothing else, I don't think they'll bore you. So I'd encourage you to review them once you get the chance to do that. We've also got some new audiobooks coming out very soon. All 3 audiobooks for War Dogs Incorporated are coming out. They've already been submitted. The Promethean is finished. Gabby did a great job on that one. She also did The Missionaries. If you're looking for audiobooks that are both intelligent and funny, you cannot do any better than Owen Stanley, The Missionaries, and The Promethean. Anyhow, it's going to be really interesting to see how this all shakes out. We intend to get our claim, our demand for arbitration entered next week. And so we very much appreciate all the enthusiastic support from the backers. That has made this possible. It's allowed us to keep moving forward with Alt Hero Q, despite the fact that the SJWs at Indiegogo were desperately trying to shut it down. And this is going to be a way, we believe, to stop this kind of arbitrary behavior. If we're successful, then we're going to make sure that an agreement is put in place where both Arkhaven and other independent creators can go ahead and crowdfund their creations without worrying about being shut down for some arbitrary, nebulous, undefined, non-specific, non-existent, made-up, false reason. And so now it's possible that things won't go our way, and the whole thing will get shut down, and the decision will be that sites like Indiegogo can do whatever they want to anyone at any time, no matter what they say, no matter what they promise, no matter what their contracts are. Now, I don't think that's likely to happen. I think that they screwed up big time. I think they know they screwed up big time. And I'll tell you right now, because if there is a settlement, they're almost certainly going to require us to not talk about it. But I can assure you that if there is a settlement, then you will know that things have changed and will change going forward. Corporations are really, really bad about admitting when they've done something wrong, and they try to sweep it all under the table. And sometimes you have to accept that, in order to get justice for your own situation, you have to accept not advertising their admission of wrongdoing to the world. Okay? That's normal. That's something you have to deal with. And so that's why I'm telling you this now, so that you'll know exactly what we're seeking to do. We're seeking to be paid what we were promised we were going to be paid. We're seeking to get justice for the written defamation and what we believe to be the verbal slander of our operations and our people. We did not violate their terms of use. We certainly did not engage in any criminal activity. Nothing that they said was true. And so we're looking for that. But then we're also looking to make sure that this kind of crap does not happen again to anybody else. We may not need to use their crowdfunding services anymore. Now we do want to get our account open again. We do want to be able to use Indiegogo if we choose to do so. But we don't actually need that because, as you know, we have our own crowdfunding site now. We're not going to go into competition with them. We have no interest in going into that business. We just want to be able to crowdfund our own projects with the help of our backers when we need to without interference. And if that means we have to do it ourselves, we do it ourselves. But that's not an option for everybody else, and we don't want to crowdfund for everybody else. So that's why we want to make sure that these other creators, whether we like them or not, have the ability to do so. And so, that would a win here set precedent to litigate with other platforms like PayPal and Kickstarter? No. This is arbitration, and so there's no legal precedent in any way, shape, or form. Now, what it might do is make it clear to the SJWs at those companies that they are going to meet with resistance, that there are potential negative consequences to their actions. The fact that Carrie Barker is no longer employed at Indiegogo 2 weeks after pulling this stunt does tend to suggest that there were people in the Indiegogo management who do not believe that things were handled properly. We'll find out more when we get the chance to speak directly with them, but they've been totally radio silent ever since we asked them specifically, what do you mean by saying that our campaign was too risky? See, they've given us multiple reasons. They said, well, this campaign violated the terms of use. Okay, how? First, they said unusual activity. That was bullshit. There was no unusual activity whatsoever. So we asked them, we said, what do you mean by unusual activity? And then they came back and said, well, it was too risky. How was it too risky? The campaign was already done. There's no risk there. And so we said, exactly what do you mean by too risky? And that's the last that we heard from them. And the only thing that we've seen since is that the woman who was primarily responsible, Carrie Barker, is now no longer employed there. So we will have to see how it goes, but I want to assure you that we are making our best possible effort. We are aware that the backers want us to stand up for ourselves. They want us to stand up for you guys. They want us to fight. And we are. And you're also, the backers are also going to be able to take part in this. This is going to be a group effort. And this is, win or lose, we're going to win or lose together. Which is, if you think about it, rather appropriate, given that, the slogan of the campaign has been, where we go one, we go all. And that's exactly what we're doing here. And that's why I believe that we're going to be successful to at least some regard, because I suspect that even some of the Indiegogo management agrees with us. Now we'll have to see. We'll have to. It's just like a football game or a basketball game. You got to play the game, no matter how strong you think your case is, no matter how good you think your team is. You still have to go out and play it. And so, I'm going to be talking to some people that are outside of my usual sphere relatively soon. If you suspect that might be related to this, it is. And so, because our goal and our focus is to win this. And I'm not concerned about lesser issues. I'm not concerned about people that I might happen to like or not, people that I might happen to trust or not. It's always very important to distinguish between people who have shown themselves to be enemies and people who are merely opponents, rivals, competitors, just maybe people you just don't like. But that's not relevant. So what we're going to, this is what we're going to do. Again, I really appreciate the intensity of the support from the backers. If you want to join them, become one of them, please back the Alt Hero Q campaign at arkhavencomics.com. And I think that we're going to have a positive result. How positive, I don't know, but we're going to find out. And we're going to find out probably before the end of January, would be my guess. So anyhow, let's take a few questions. Let's not get into the whole moon thing, because frankly, I'm kind of bored of that after 2 days on the blog. One thing you need to understand is that I have a wide range of interests, and I know a fair amount about a lot of things, but I'm not equally interested in everything. And so, what's my opinion on a federal minimum wage? I think it's a terrible idea. I think at the most, that sort of thing should be looked at on a city or state level. I'm going to talk with friends who are, okay, what's the best kill shot to make them see through the mirror? Focus on his confessions, his repeated confessions at being a habitual liar. Once you know someone's a liar, you can't trust them. You literally cannot trust anything they say. And so what Peterson tries to do is he tries to turn that into a strength. He tries to say, I'm a terrible liar. I've always had a problem telling the truth. I lie for this reason, I lie for that reason, I lie for all these different reasons. And what he's trying to convince you is that because he's telling you that he's a liar, that really means that he's honest. Because after all, here he is telling you that he's a liar. But no, he hasn't changed. We know he hasn't changed because he still lies all the time. So you need to not fall for that Jedi mind trick. You know, if somebody tells you that they're a habitual liar, then don't believe anything else that they say. Believe that he's a habitual liar. Let's see. Atheist told me, sure is convenient that God agrees with you about everything. I told him, sure is convenient your brain with you agrees with you about everything. Bad rhetoric? Yes. I would just go Socratic with that by saying, why do you think that God agrees with me about everything? I mean, I don't like a lot of the things that God tells us in the Bible. It's like, or you can also go with the whole concept of agreeing with gravity. You can disagree with gravity all you like, but you're still going to faceplant if you ignore it. Let's see. Rock Bear. I just joined. Oh, that's a good question. Would our Indiegogo alternative have functions that can also replace Patreon? It will eventually. It doesn't yet. But that is part of the long-term plan. What we'd like to do, we're not going to set up a competitor to any of these companies. We just want to be able to handle our own operations without interference. So, we would probably consider doing Patreon style accounts for our authors, for example. Our authors, because that way we would know that they would not be subject to potential interference the way that a number of people have been. Why the Dark Lord fascination and moniker when you serve the light? Oh, it's just the usual, adopt the label they stick on you and run with it. I've been getting called some version of, the devil for since 2001. And so, in fact, the whole thing really started, it didn't actually start with me. It actually started with my fans, because they said, they started calling them Vox and his ilk. And then that became the Dread ilk when it became clear that people were afraid to even reference me on their own blog, because a bunch of my ilk would show up and argue with them. In fact, the late Equus Palladus was achieved probably the best example of that when he went on Michael Medved's radio show, and Medved was trying to somehow spin my words to say that I was saying things that I was not. And the pale horse just completely schooled him. I can still hear his voice in my head going, "But that ain't true. You're just making that up in your own head." It was quite effective. Let's see. Anyhow, it all happened from there. And there's actually a really funny, where the whole Supreme Dark Lord thing came from was during the Hugo destruction. John C. Wright had written up this whole thing about the evil legion of evil, and he called Larry Correa he called him the International Lord of Hate. Sarah Hoyt was the beautiful but evil space princess, and I was the Supreme Dark Lord. And he had this really funny, very Lovecraftian bit about how he had built this giant black basalt statue to me, and how he and his he and other followers would engage in unspeakable rites at midnight and stuff in celebration of in front of the statue. It was totally over the top. It was hilarious because, John C. Wright is one of the best writers out there. And so it just stuck. So, and then also, it's because people have increasingly learned, like Jordan Peterson's fans, like Indiegogo, like the science fiction community, they've learned not to mess with us. We're pretty good at what we do. And so, if the SJWs want to bring it, we'll come back at them, and we'll come back at them harder and faster than they ever imagined. Let's see. Making a new platform could turn into something amazing. Would you ever look to expand as a platform with legitimate rules, not just subjective rules? I don't even know what you mean by that. What is legitimate versus what is illegitimate about subjectivity? Is the Space Bunny name based on Running With It? No, it's based on the video game Space Bunnies Must Die. Back in the day, people thought she looked kind of like Allison from that game. And yeah, of course, I guess it does come from the pile of SJW skulls. Let's see here. Is my wife biracial like myself? No, she is Scandinavian, or she's Norwegian and Irish. Let's see. Adopt the insults. Grigory Rasputin, Gamma or Sigma? I have no idea. I can't say I've ever given the matter any thought. What happened to the audio before? No idea. It was funny to watch Jordan Peterson run to Milo's defense for the Patreon ban. Yeah, I mean, he's a Gamma. He's conflict avoidant. Ever since Milo's foreword was published, and then after the book came out, Peterson is now desperately playing defense on his right flank. He's desperately trying to defend his right flank because he knows that it's absolutely and utterly vulnerable. Anyone who is a Christian should not be following Jordan Peterson. They should be rejecting Jordan Peterson. He is an anti-Christian. I don't think he's the Antichrist, but he is without doubt an evil anti-Christian persona whose goals and objectives are literally satanic. I don't think that he's a full-blown Satanist in the Aleister Crowley sense, but he's absolutely a small s Satanist. I mean, you don't practice. Think about that whole newfound pen of light. Okay, he is practicing occult magic with a K. It's called, I'm spacing on the name, automatic writing. And it's been a staple of occultists for hundreds of years. I mean, imagine if instead of, his doing his automatic writing with his newfound pen of light and asking questions of his pen of light, and allowing it to illuminate him, if he had a newfound Ouija board, okay, would you believe that someone who is relying upon dreams and Ouija boards to be someone who is compatible with Christianity in any way? Of course not. That's what he does. He doesn't just rely upon his own dreams. He relies upon his wife's dreams. So it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if there's some involvement in witchcraft in that extended family. let's see here. He thinks the conservatives and the neocons can help him get back the traction he lost with the nationalists. Well, yeah, that's the game, but it's not going to work. Neoconservatism is dying. The Weekly Standard was not murdered by Phil Anschutz, as John Podhoretz would have it. I mean, if anything, it was a justifiable homicide. Neoconservatism is dead. It's always been, Trotskyite world revolutionaryism, but with a democratic vein rather than a socialist one. But the objectives have always remained the same. And that's actually Peterson's rightful place among what we call conservatives and neocons. But it's really among the world, the globalist world revolutionaries. That whole, anytime you see anybody talking about the need to end war, that's what you're dealing with. The only people who talk in terms of ending war are either totally clueless hippie types, which, fine, there's always going to be stupid people out there. There's always going to be clueless people out there. But the only other type are people who are one world globalists. They believe in ending war through the use of totalitarian force. But they know they can't. They know they can't start with that, so they try to con you into accepting all these restrictions and all these agreements and everything that are all meant to destroy the nations and render them supine in order to be ruled over by this, magical government that will prevent war. Yeah, I heard about this. Somebody said Two-Face Van Sciver was bragging on stream about a big check that DC sent him and how he'd never speak ill of their products again, even praise them unprompted. Doesn't that just surprise you? No, I mean, people are who they are. I mean, that's why I called them. That's why I called him Two-Face. He will say whatever he feels he needs to say at the time. Were people evil before Christianity? Yes, and they're evil now. I mean, the world is fallen. We all have evil inside us. But there's also evil outside us. And Christianity is the way that we combat that evil. Too often Christians think light refers to the light of Jesus, but it's often an occult thing. That's true. And people too often think that God necessarily refers to God the Father, the Almighty God who sent Jesus Christ to die for our sins, but they don't. That's the first question I always ask somebody like a Ben Shapiro. What God do you serve? Do you worship the Christian God? Believe them when they tell you no. And then ask them more questions about their God. Usually, you'll get a description that makes it very, very clear to you that whatever entity it is they worship, it is not the deity, the divinity that you worship as God. So many people willing to sell their souls for pieces of silver. Sad. Oh, that's not new. The only thing that ever really surprises me is how cheaply so many people are willing to sell their souls. That astonishes me. Not that they're willing to do it. Thoughts on the James Fields case, the Charlottesville driver. He got 400 plus years in prison. He's a patsy, The whole thing was railroaded. The verdict was ridiculous. If you understand what first-degree murder is, the idea that he specifically premeditated his actions is just ludicrous. Why do you think Jesus was born when he was? I don't know. Doesn't surprise me that DC pays influencers. I don't know if they're talking about that. I mean, he's a DC artist. You know, he's probably going to go back to DC at some point in time. You know, I mean, he's not going to be able to continue to con his followers indefinitely. I mean, look at, it was kind of funny. They were trying to, when I was talking to some of the folks about the lawyers about the Indiegogo case, I mentioned the accusations and implications about money laundering. And it was kind of funny because the lawyer said, wait, they were trying to say that you guys are laundering money? I said, yes. He said, well, how would that work? You guys published 26 comics in a year on a relative shoestring. So it was kind of funny because I said, yeah, it is a little bit ironic. We published 26 comics with less than half the revenue that Ethan Van Sciver brought in, and he still hasn't published anything. If anyone should not be talking at all about the possibility of money laundering, it'd be the guy who has more money and produced nothing. Now, I don't believe for a second that that's the case. In fact, I'm totally confident that no one was more surprised by his crowdfunding success than Ethan. But you got to remember, people like to look at him like he's the leader. He's not. He's the follower. You know, he only did his campaign because he saw how successful Alt Hero was, and he saw how successful then Richard Meyer was. So he thinks, well, if these jokers who can't even draw can be that successful, imagine what I can do. And he was right, you know. But what he hasn't learned is that there's a lot more to running a comics operation than the ability to draw. So, somebody said, yeah, it was a royalty check for Justice League. You know, fair enough. You do the work, it's successful, you get rewarded for it. Good on him. Let's see. Can I find Jordanetics on paperback in Romania? Yes, if you go to any major bookstore, they probably can order it from Ingram. What's your opinion on big government, state interventionism, Keynesianism, protectionism, and mercantilism? I suggest you read my book, The Return of the Great Depression. I have a chapter that specifically addresses most of those economic theories. You do good work. Just want to say thanks. Thank you. I appreciate you guys tuning in, especially, you know, randomly like this. I just really wanted to make sure that the robot voice was conquered. In the good we trust on USA Dollar, it says in God we trust. Let's see. Have you decided not to put your YouTube streams in podcast format? Hasn't been updated in a while. I've never had anything to do with that. So other people have always just taken my YouTube channel and put it into podcast. If somebody wants to do that, fine. I don't care. Let's see. This is the best chat ever. I don't know about that, but I'm glad that we have. I mean, it's kind of amazing that we have nearly 400 people hanging out here on a Saturday. Let's see. Okay. After questioning my programming on the free trade issue, I can't stop noticing the drones repeating the prepared lines. Yeah, that's one of the things that I think is most interesting about once you develop the ability to see through the talking points, once you develop the ability to see through the liars, you can't help but notice how common it is. And that's why I think that the NPC meme is not only an effective rhetorical device, but I think it's actually alarmingly accurate metaphor for how most people go through life these days. Let's see here. Did you hear about Tony Blair and how he communicated with a spirit of light before making important decisions? I'm not surprised at all. Most of these, elite globalists are occultists on some level. Many of them are, full-blown Satanists. That's why they hate Christianity so much. Christianity and Jesus Christ are the only things that really frighten them, other than the more powerful, other than their own God. And so that's why they hate and fear Christians so much. How would you feel about a Vox Day community Discord? I like the people here. I think there is one. I mean, I think there are actually several Discord communities or whatever. Look around. It might not be called, it's probably not called Vox Day. It's probably called, Evil Legion of Evil, Dread Ilk, something like that. I have not played Escape from Tarkov. Did you see Shapiro post his 23andMe? 100% Ashkenazi Jew. Is that even possible? I guess so. I mean, he's, the thing is that given the way that he is so promoted and stuff, it's entirely possible that he is some sort of, significant, rabbinical line or something like that. I don't know that they actually go for that sort of thing, nobilities and whatnot within Judaism, but it wouldn't shock me if there was. Let's see. The thing I noticed by watching Peterson is that he's out to do two things. He's out to make us submissive to government authority, yes, and to draw us away from Christianity into his own twisted theology. Exactly. And that's why I keep telling people he's not anti-Christian. He's not a gateway into Christianity. He's he is a diversion away from Christianity. He's a diversion away from Christianity and away from nationalism. Let's see. Just remember, Discord is heavily monitored by the ADL and they save everything. That's true. That's true of everything. You shouldn't email your best friends anything that you're not willing to have printed on the front page of the New York Times. If you notice, that's one of the things that the media complains about me. They say, oh, he's so slippery and stuff. It's like, no, I just speak the truth, and and I make sure that I am aware that people who dislike me intensely are always listening. So you just need to always comport yourself in that manner. So anyhow, well, I need to get going. So thank you so much for tuning in. Again, if you want to help support us in our legal campaign against Indiegogo, please consider backing the Alt Hero Q campaign at arkhavencomics.com. Just a word of warning, our payment processor is European, so if you get your card declined for some reason, just call them and let them know, hey, I'm trying to do a charge of this amount to a European company, and then that'll clear it right up. So have a good evening, and or have a good afternoon, I should say, and we'll look forward to seeing you at the next Darkstream.